Welcome to our continuing coverage of the North American LCS Summer Playoffs. Hello everyone, I'm James Patterson, and today we will learn which team will advance to the finals for a shot at the title of North American champions. Now to kick off our second semifinal today, I'm joined by Aiden Zyrene Moon and David Freak Turley. Good morning, gentlemen. First off, how about that EU series?
Yeah, business as usual, I suppose. Fnatic.
For Fnatic, at least, yeah, business as usual. 21
wins in a row, and you want to talk.
It's crazy to think about, though, because the last game that they lost to professional play was MSI Game 5 against SKT.
Yeah.
That's how long it's been, and it was against a Korean team that's #1 right now in Korea. That's how dominant they have been.
It's got to be nice to not know what a loss feels like.
Yeah, I don't know what that feels like either, honestly.
I watched MSI, by the way.
In my mind, I won. I killed the Faker Slayer. But what I actually want to talk about what Stress said, though. He's like, I really hope Origin takes him to 5 games because he wants Fnatic to be tested. I don't. I want Fnatic to be so good they don't lose games to Origin, and I want the 24-0 season. That's record status right there. That's actually a better win rate than SKT after they came back from Worlds, where I think they had 18 or 21 on their run through Champions Winter. So I want the miracle season.
It would be a phenomenal accomplishment, but I think the idea behind being challenged is we would like to see that team struggle before going to Worlds, because undoubtedly as they approach Worlds, they will go up against teams that can pressure them, might be able to take a game or even beat them.
Well, they were challenged at MSI, so they do have some practice with that. They had the international experience already, despite being a relatively young squad, so they are very seasoned. And Daylor seems like an absolutely amazing coach that if I was a player, I would love to have that guy there. He seems like he has a great head on his shoulders and he knows how to run a team. But also, I think you want Fnatic to do that because if they win Worlds, you're like, I killed the world champion. Solo killed the world champion.
My Twitter profile will change.
This is all motivated by
and we can be like, you know what? That world champion was in Challenger with us one day. We were like, this Bevan guy.
He's a really good player. Yeah.
We saw it first.
Actually, well, I mean, if you think about it, back in Season 1, I solo killed Shushay in the top lane twice in the same season that he won the World Championship. So, I mean, I've already done it. We just have to get more European World Champions to be slain by yours truly.
No, you know what we need? What we need is that...
It's a bigger ego for David Freak Turley.
Yeah, we need that. We need a bigger ego. But what we should just do is take the World Championship team and make them all 1v1 you to be true champions, right? Because clearly you are the gatekeeper of the World Championship.
Let's take the trophies every time. But, sorry, to get back on the Fnatic point, though, real quick. Every single time that these teams go in boot camp, they actually learn a hell of a lot. So even if Fnatic does 24-0 and Europe's not good enough to beat Fnatic, these guys are still going to go play Edward Gaming and LGD and SKT and get stomped a little bit and then learn pretty quickly. So I do think the road ahead is good for Fnatic.
I do have to bring up a big point, though, because right now the last competitive patches that we're going to see are 5.14, 5.15. There are huge changes in 5.16, and 5.17, 18 are basically prepping for Worlds.
Yeah.
You're not going to see competitive juggernauts until Worlds.
True.
There's going to be so many pocket picks, so teams that learn adaptation, and that's going to be a very highly valued thing coming into Worlds. So pocket strats, do you know counter picks? Do you know matchups? Do you know how to play this champion and these strategies and new items? That's going to be absolutely crazy.
With all of that in mind, I would be pretty happy having Huni and Rainover on my team, knowing that juggernauts are something that are about to be introduced. So, just saying, if I were Daylor, coach of Fnatic, I'd be like, I'm okay with this.
I have really dominant top laners I can take over games. That's perfect.
Yeah, the way that this is trending, I think that's okay for us. Well, regardless, it was quite an accomplishment for them today to even extend to the 21-0. It's going to make the finals very exciting, just the thought of a record maybe being set. A quick broadcasting note, our games will go on as scheduled at noon Pacific time, and we will be hearing from the team owners on the analyst desk in just a bit. But right now, we're going to dive a little deeper into this week's North American action, starting with CLG achieving a franchise first, looking at an appearance in the playoff finals.
Yeah, and it's actually really impressive how well this team has come together, because if you look at what happened since last time, right? Since last year, since last split for CLG, not last split, since last year, Powalter comes in for Link, and I actually overhyped Powalter a little bit. I had said he was top 3 mids in North America. That might not really be true. At the very least, there's a big drop-off between Bjergsen and Phoenix and the next guy. Powalter's fine. He's still a good player, but he's not as dominant as I thought he was going to be. Regardless, this whole team has done so damn well. Smithy's got so much flack, but he's still very solid as a player. But it's the other 3 that have really, really stepped up. Zion Spartan's going crazy. He's pulling out the Olaf. He's split pushing like mad. He's winning his lanes really hard. Doublelift, I think, having his best year, or at least best split, probably ever for him. And Aftermove, just solid as ever.
Yeah, I think that You have a lot of really good points there. I think that Doublelift's best split. I think Zion's definitely coming into his own, and the team's letting him play these types of things. Yeah. I do contest the Pobelter thing, though, because I feel like it's not that he's not a great mid laner, it's that the style he's having to play is more side lane focused. Don't play assassins, and it's kind of shifted out of his favor. Like, he was the assassin guy, right? He was the guy who's got the 1v1 skills in mid lane. Now he's like, okay, I have to play Azir, I have to pick up these ranged champions that just poke, AP Kog'Maw, be the insurance policy if Zion and Doublelift don't pay out. So I feel like that's what they're kind of pushing him towards.
Let's dive into this point a little bit then. As you mentioned, are you suggesting that there is a better CLG where Pobelter does get to play more assassin-oriented champions, or is it the best they can do here by putting him into this kind of farm-heavy
semi-supportive role?
Semi-supportive role.
I feel like that's what mid lane is becoming, is the insurance policy if your top laner and bot lane don't get going, right? That's what I feel like it's becoming now in the meta. It's not the whole 1v1 me, because now you're seeing people, play, even when they play assassins like Ahri and Diana, they're taking TP to affect side lanes.
Yeah, it's curious. I'm actually not sure. I'm definitely mulling it over. I do think that
there's a mixture, though. We see a lot of Korean and Chinese teams still playing Zed, still playing LeBlanc.
There's a ton of Yasuo coming out, too, right?
Exactly.
Like, that's a cornerstone champion that you've got to play around. It's weird to me, right? Because we're not in the Season 2 era of Froggen plays Karthus, and 50 minutes into the game, you just win because he has 7,000 CS.
We are in the age of AP Kog'Maw, though.
We are in the age of AP Kog'Maw, and we have seen games won by this champion before, right? In Power View, playing a lot of Varus, things like that. Like, I think, honestly, we're at the point where League of Legends is much more diverse.
Yes.
Like, whether it's that top lane champions that could carry got better, Nargon introduced, Olaf's item builds came out, like Black Cleaver came out, which is, of course, a big deal. Rumble got, like, re-accepted as, like, a big champion. Like, maybe we're just at a point where teams have realized more types of strategies, and so we see more top lane carries, and Runeglave's now a thing, and Devour's now a thing, so jungle carries are now a thing. And I mean, I think just generally in the landscape of League of Legends, just in the power levels of champions and strategies, mid lane has gone down a peg. I think you can still be mid lane focused as a team. I think it's absolutely possible. FLICKR exists, for example. But I think, yes, it's up to the team to decide what is best in the game or even as their team style.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too, is when mid lane was so dominant because it was central to the map, it was all about killing the person, getting an advantage, and then snowballing from there. As the percentage of how much that is important in the game goes down by like 6, that gets redistributed to everywhere else, right? So things just got a little more carry potential in those roles. I do think that there is more strategic diversity. We did it, boys. Strategic diversity. We did it. But the thing is when there's more of that, that means that teams find a certain style that sticks with them. And like you said, maybe there's a strategy, maybe there's a world that exists where Pobelter just solo kills everybody in mid lane. It's not this world. But that would definitely make them a better team if that could happen, right? That's just a way hypothetical thing. But right now, the way that they're doing it is, you know what? Zion and Doublelift seem to make a really good combo, right? We have this guy who always goes after AD carries and this guy who's always going to go after the front line. I really like the way that they play this. And then if they ever do get behind, like we've had those games where Pobelter's on AP Cog, right? And then the game just kind of gets out of hand. It's like, don't worry, guys, I got this. AP Kog'Maw, when I get Ludens, level 16, game's over, even though we're down in gold. So I like that insurance policy if they can't make the plays. But that's their fallback. And it's good to have that, because when teams don't draft wave clear and they don't draft these things that set them up, I feel like that's kind of a... You're setting yourself up for no comeback, and no potential to actually get back into the game.
It's just a higher requirement on execution then, because you have less win conditions.
Yes.
I do want to look at the fact that the series yesterday was a 3-0, and CLG wasn't necessarily pushed into showing too many strategies. I mean, and so this is kind of an extension of the, well, do they have a strategy in which Pobelter is the main focus or the main carry? I think that that's a pretty big advantage for CLG moving forward towards the finals, not having had to show too many strategies.
Yeah, I think CLG going into whatever the next opponent is, which is Team Liquid or TSM, and even if you look down to Worlds, I think CLG are likely to make Worlds, I would say. Then you've got players like Godv and Pawn and FLICKR to care about, right? Like, Pobelter's got a really tough test ahead of him.
Yes.
And obviously, like, going from Bjergsen to FLICKR is another big leap, right? It just gets harder as you go on.
Going from playoffs, your first playoffs to Worlds is a huge leap too.
So you know, maybe you get Dark Passage in your group and it's a little bit easier for you. But yeah, obviously, like, really tough test ahead for CLG. I don't know how ready for that CLG is. They haven't been to Worlds in over 2 years. I think other parts of the map are ready. I just think in general the CLG style is working.
I tell you who is ready: the CLG fans.
That's true.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about the fact that the CLG fans, the number of times that hashtag Golden Age has, come up in the past and not been fulfilled. They made it to the finals of the NALCS, guys.
Yeah, and you know, Doublelift will once again go to Worlds in some
fashion.
form. Every season, Doublelift goes.
We don't know that yet.
That's true. He might decline the analyst desk.
So Doublelift has been in a permanent golden age because he goes to every Worlds. It's just the rest of CLG's finally catching up.
He hasn't lost a game at Worlds in like 2 years.
There you go.
He has lost the analyst desk vote combo. You know, he didn't vote SKT enough, and Monte Cristo won in season 3 and season 4. I don't remember anymore.
Do we really keep count anymore?
I just remember.
I don't think we do anymore.
I just think we didn't track in season 4, so Monte Cristo's like the perennial winner now. Sorry, yeah. As far as CLG at Worlds goes, I mean,
I think just CLG as it's the accomplishment of the organization, but coupled with what this means for the fans, because this is a long time coming, and I just want to kind of explore the fandom around this organization, which has been so diehard for so long, and it's finally being fulfilled.
I mean, absolutely good for them. And there's a really minor point, and it's not like one of the big storylines of NALCS, but they did it with an all-NA team, which is cool. Like when you have Huni and Rainover came over, and they're really good Korean players, and Fnatic's super good, and Edward Gaming got Pawn and Deft, and Imp came over, and he's obviously like a god of AD carry, and he's playing in China as well. It's just nice to see like a team. It's like, no, all their players were like from this continent, and it's just not that I have anything against Team Liquid or TSM for having Korean players in the roster. It's just an interesting note where it's like, yeah, they found the homegrown talent pool, and it's players you wouldn't really have expected in some cases.
Yep.
Isn't Hotshot the guy who said that there's no NA talent in China?
Yeah, that's right. He's the guy who's complaining about no NA talent.
He's misleading everyone.
Except Smithy.
Yeah, he's directing all the other owners' attention to other regions so that he can corral the NA talent onto one team. He's like, no, guys, don't look here. There's nothing to see here.
There is something to be said, though, for that, though. We've actually seen, as a specific example of Gravity, actually fall apart due to communication errors. Where, like, in specifically Move, who's still a very good player, would go the wrong way because they weren't on the same page. And we've heard Rush talk about that with Impulse, where he can't give dedicated instructions to the bottom half of the map. And it's actually, an advantage for CLG that they're all native English speakers. Absolutely.
Yeah,
but just as a random point, I wanted to bring that up.
Communication is definitely a crux of League of Legends, and being able to execute on it is important. Now, as you mentioned, CLG is going to be playing the winner of Team Liquid TSM, the semifinal that is playing today. And if the regular season is any indication, this should be a very competitive best-of-5 series, gentlemen, as they went 1-1 in the regular season.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a lot of things here to just look at between these two teams, right? Azir. Very actually contested pick, though, because Bjergsen and Phoenix are both undefeated on it this split, going 5 for Phoenix, 4 for Bjergsen. And then when you look at what people usually play into it, like Victor, they're both 1 and 2 on it this split. So I would actually be like, all right, if we want to ban Azir or take it, seems like a high priority strategy here. And it's not that they're not good on Victor, right? The fact is they've CS very well on it. They provide a lot of pressure. But playing Victor in team fights is very, very different. The mid-range mage, the kiting back, and where to put down the gravity field for choke points all requires coordination with your team, more so than you would think. Whereas Azir's like, I'm in the back line, I'm still hanging out here, I'm very safe, and he's actually way more self-sufficient than Victor is.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, anytime you have more range and a move block to safety, like, you just get to do more things. It's why Tristana seems to be so highly sought after right now as an AD carry. She just gets to do things all the time, and you always have this uptime, and so you're always going to be useful no matter what.
Like doing things.
Yeah.
It's a good part of League of Legends.
Even though, like, for example, because it's my role, like, Jinx has more damage than Tristana, period, and is probably a better turret killer and is probably a better team fighter, but Rocket Jump exists, so Tristana probably has more damage uptime, and that's just, that matters. You can extrapolate that to Azir, plus you have, of course, the stream of shuffles and whatnot, and yeah, Azir's a big deal. What's interesting on that, though, is TSM didn't play the champion at all, nor was it banned against them in their quarterfinal against Gravity. This might have been them hiding it and saying, we're going to wait on this one. Azir is obviously very much still good post 5-14, just go Nashor's Tooth and you crush people's faces, but, TSM, well, I am curious what their priorities end up being.
Yeah, I really want to see if that was just a strategy for Gravity to kind of just be like, all right, Keen's kind of a throwaway mid lane. We know he's CSD at 10 is not very good. We'll just put Bjergsen in there. He can roam, no problem. He'll play a supportive, and that's great, right? And then just put Dyrus on something that can just do really well against Hanser, affect the rest of the map, shut down Altec, which I think was a big part of the Olaf strategy, is because if you shut down Altec, you shut down Gravity. You shut down a very large portion of Gravity's damage and a lot of what they are able to do in the game, right? If you can't do anything, like you like doing things,
right?
Then yes, that was the strategy. But also, it wasn't just so much that TSM shifted because they were the team that had the longest average game time And what they started to do was take control of the game instead of letting the game happen around them and then waiting for a mistake and capitalizing. They started to kind of force errors. They started to dive turrets more often. And that's the TSM that, you know, they should be playing around that strategy, because that is a strategy that will prevail at Worlds, that will get you some effective actions early on, right? Because it's all right, honestly, it's a terrible way to play League of Legends where you are not the one being proactive and you're being reactive. There are way more openings when you're playing reactive.
I mean, just period, like, mistakes happen all the time in League of Legends, and if you're not good enough to capitalize on them, you're not very good. Just period. Like, no one plays perfectly. There is always the room to get a kill or a dive or something, and if you can't find those, you're just not playing right.
Yeah, and as the teams get better, you see less of those openings.
Of course, but you still have to find them.
I want to jump in real quick, remind the viewers at home that the games will be starting at 12 Pacific as scheduled. The reason being because we need to give the players the proper amount of time to prepare as they were promised. Now, with all of the talk of Azir and the importance of the mid lane in mind, in the spring split playoffs, we saw Phoenix getting fully powered up and carrying his team to a 3rd place finish. And after that, he never powered down. Now he has become a rock for the team on and off the rift.
I think that's a really good point.
제가 리퀴드에 왔을 때 제가 원했던 건 그 리퀴드의 전 시즌보다 성적이 잘 나는 거였는데 컬스가 항상 4등만 하다가 제가 와서 3등을 했어요. 그래서 그게 너무 기뻤죠.
Team Liquid breaks the curse and they will take 3rd place.
그리고 미드 라인을 하면서 약간 최고의 선수가 되겠다. 그 미드 라인의 포지션에서. 근데 약간 지금은 한 3위 안에는 드는 것 같아요.
In the game, he's like super mechanically like proficient, and he's super accurate, which is really funny because his personality is kind of like all over the place.
Outside of the game, I'd say he's just like a troll guy, like very like goofball.
제가 원래는 그런 성격이 아니었는데 제가 처음에 여기 왔을 때 팀이 굉장히 힘들었어요. 약간 피글렛 선수와 팀메이트의 막 갈등도 있고 그래가지고 이렇게 팀 분위기가 되면 절대 성적을 잘 낼 수가 없다. 그래서 제가 그때 이후로 항상 장난을 억지로라도 치면서 애들을 많이 웃겨주려고 노력하고.
He has a habit of eating stuff, like biting stuff.
그냥 심심해서 그냥 자꾸 뭘 하고 싶은데 큐는 막 40분 막 점수가 너무 높아서 컵이 제일 그나마 나은 것 같아. 플라스틱 컵.
He just like eats his shirts. I don't know. One time there was this shirt that we all got from a sponsor on my desk, and I was wondering if it was mine or not. Then I just, okay, surely enough, there's a hole in there. Okay, Phoenix, this is yours.
막 애들 사이사이 막 관계를 제가 좀 많이 좋아지게 한 것 같아요. 그래서 저희가 좀 더 잘해줄 수 있었던 것 같고, 네, 그런 것 같아요.
Phoenix is a risk taker sometimes, and he likes to go for really calculated plays.
The 1v before Azir Quadro was pretty disgusting. I don't think like LCS has seen something like that this season.
We actually dove their bot lane turret and we gave up a couple kills. So I was kind of worried about the outcome of the game because we gave up a pretty big lead there.
내가 그냥 타워 찍고 내가 여기서 리콜하면 저기 나한테 들어올 것 같아서 내가 리콜 모션을 했는데 저기 알아서 바드가 매지컬 주얼디로 그냥 길을 뚫고 오는데 제가 그때 I'm gonna make play here 이렇게 딱 말하고
Make play now here. Okay, okay. Oh my God, Phoenix! Holy shit! What just happened? A quadra kill, an amazing play by Phoenix on Azir!
I just look bottom and I see all their dead, like the corpses in the floor, and it's like, what just happened? Because it was so insane. I've never seen anything like this before. One before, like quadra kill, like who does that?
All of us just started running towards Baron. We knew that like the game was probably over after that.
막 애들이 막 소리를 지르는데 해냈다. 막 제가 막 잘할 때마다 막 온몸에 막 전율이 막 흐르고 막 내가 막 신이 된 것 같고 막 그래요. 막 제가 막 정말 1등을 하고 싶지만 그건 엄청 힘든 것 같고 그래도 좀 더 잘해지려면 항상 남들보다 잠을 덜 적게 자고 생각을 더 많이 하고 연습을 더 많이 해야 될 것 같아요. 제가 만약에 미드에서 좀 더 잘하고 싶으면.
Now he'll have tough competition going up against our spring split MVP Bjergsen. So gentlemen, we've already touched on it a little bit, but let's continue the conversation as to how we think this lane matchup is going to play out.
Before I was so rudely interrupted by Phoenix, I was trying to say, yeah, Phoenix, he ended up just like we said, in playoffs, Scrim Phoenix showed up, never stopped showing up the entire split. Up against Bjergsen, though, I don't know. It really depends on what TSM is going to do strategy-wise.
Yes.
Because they put him on a bunch of Lulu and Orianna, a bunch of these supportive mid laners to kind of enable Olaf, enable his other teammates to actually do things. And I feel like that's a good formula for TSM, but they also have this other fallback of Bjergsen, he's a good mid laner. Phoenix, though, is also a really good mid laner. These guys are definitely number 1 and 2 in NA.
Before our graphic disappears, I want to point out where the major differences are in the kill share percentage and the damage percentage. Those are where you see the massive discrepancies between these two players. So Freak, what does that tell us about these players and these teams?
I think it tells a big story about the rest of their teams, because I think these guys are similarly skilled. I will come back to something that Incarnation told me in the very beginning, where he says that he thinks Phoenix is, as an individual player, number 1, but Bjergsen gets more help, so he's harder to play against when you're playing against TSM. I think that still remains true. Facing Bjergsen in the LCS is harder than facing Phoenix in the LCS because of the context of the games. Now, as far as the damage share graphics go, I think the reason it's Bjergsen focused because Dyrus, up until playoffs, was playing almost exclusively very dumb, safe, low damage tanks, and Wild Turtle was kind of being told to play more scared and playing more backline and playing more things like Sivir. Whereas on Team Liquid, you've got Quas, who's happy to play big carries up in the top lane, and you've got Piglet, who just wants to take over the game no matter what, and is just going to kill you in lane with Xpecial. So the context of the teams just puts more on the consistent Bjergsen than it does on Phoenix, even though I think the players are very similarly skilled. Now, you were talking, Aiden, a second ago about playing support mids, playing different styles, playing what's up to the team. I completely agree it's the right choice. We've seen some of the most dominant teams in history play this way. SKT at their best with FLICKR. He'll still play things like Lulu mid. Samsung White with Pawn. Again, actually known very much for his Lulu play, actually. One of his better champions. That's why I thought he was better than Dade back then, is he played more supportive. He had more styles to play. I think it's very smart. Even though you have such a dominant player, being able to play a supportive style, because the composition is better, I think is very smart.
Yeah, versatility is, I think, something Bjergsen might have over Phoenix here.
I agree.
And I think that's really recently developed, and the team has actually embraced that. But also, I want to go back to the damage, because we were talking about that, and I feel like it's actually indicative of the styles that they were playing. Because when you look at Bjergsen, that's actually, I think, the highest damage share of any mid laner in the world for his team.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
That's an absolutely absurd percent of your team's damage, because Wild Turtle ended up having about 200 damage per minute less than every other AD carry in the league, very close to that. And that's because what they would do is their strategy was, okay, Bjergsen's Kog'Maw, Bjergsen's Azir, he's the only one who gets to do damage. Right? Because there's no way that you're going to get in range when you're playing an AD carry and you have 500 range, right? These guys outrange you, and TSM plays long, drawn-out games where they wait around Bjergsen's power spike, they wait for the level 16 Kog'Maw, and then he's the only one doing damage, like I said. Yep. He's the only one doing damage, and then that lowers everybody else's damage in comparison.
Well, we've discussed plenty. There's still plenty to discuss. So for more on this series, we're going to check in with the guys who will be making the calls at the caster desk.
Thank you, Dash. Hello, everyone. I am Rivington Bison III, and joining me on the caster desk are the winners of the Inter-Office Paintball Championship, Sam Kobe Hartman Kensler, a.k.a. The Quickest Shot, and Joshua Chat Leesman, or as his victims know him, the North Wind Terror.
I guess so.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or Canada's First Son. That's always one of my favorites.
I like
but
that one as
we
well.
are about to have an even better game than the Inter-Office Paintball Championship coming up right now in our semifinals.
Yeah.
No, absolutely impossible. It's going to be possible. Team Liquid versus Team Solo Mid. A break for Team Liquid here. The only other time it happened back in 2013, they got a bye, and they went 0-4 in that series, one of the worst playoff series they've been in. Did the break hurt them here, or is it going to help this time?
Well, that's one of the things that I was kind of looking into, because it's a 3-week break from the end of the regular season. I think since a lot of the leagues have had similar breaks, we just saw Fnatic and Origin over in Europe win. We saw CLG win with a 3-week break. Also, there was a 2-week break before the quarterfinals. At this point in League of Legends, I don't really think anyone got lazy in the offseason, and scrimming was similar enough to playing on stage that I don't think it actually has a negative impact, especially this year.
Yeah, I mean, CLG was very adamant that their time spent scrimming in those weeks off was very helpful. Yeah. The interesting thing is, both of these teams did scrim CLG. Team Liquid and TSM spent a lot of their time scrimming versus CLG, so a lot of the things that team thinks are powerful may be used here by both of these, or maybe contested here by both these teams, like Tank, Echo, Jungle, Olaf top, these sorts of trends.
I'm really wondering how much the trends are going to be from scrims versus being from trends around the world, because one of the cool things is everyone's in playoffs right now, and it does seem like every region has somewhat different on their priority scale. Like I was watching the EDG versus LGD semifinal last night. Nobody was picking Elise. Elise is banned in like most of the other regions. Ryze was still a big pick in the top lane for Acorn, and I'm not sure which one of these things is correct at the time, because you have one region doing one thing, another region doing completely different thing, and at the end of the day, it will come down a little bit to comfort, especially for these games.
Yeah, a lot of the top laners in North America not touching Rise after the last round of nerfs, don't even want to go near it. Because so much of his damage late game was taken down. Yeah. But obviously still
I personally don't like it. I wish I could speak to those players to wonder why they're finding the value in it. But there's a lot of things like that across the board. Even the Tank Echo that Xsmithy pulled out yesterday, how strong is that pick depending on the context?
Yeah. It was interesting that we just had so much mid focus here with the video on Phoenix and everything, because that has been so much of TSM's focus in the past. But as they were saying, a lot of people underrate Phoenix. He actually has the most solo kills of any North American LCS mid lane player. He's got 4 for himself. He has been solo killed once also.
He's the guy who took one as well.
Bjergsen has never been solo killed, but he only has 2 for himself.
Yeah. One of the ways I see the matchup between Bjergsen and Phoenix is Phoenix has higher highs and lower lows, and Bjergsen is more consistently good. I think there's some stats that back that up as well, as far as like the biggest leads you can have in a game. In 9 of the 18 games during the regular season, Phoenix was 16 CS up or more over his opponent. Just these monstrous leads, but at the same time, he gets solo killed occasionally. Obviously, Bjergsen is more of a centerpiece in the team's composition.
Well, that falls right into place with lowest wards placed for a mid laner as well, right up at the top there.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't have the other responsibilities that Bjergsen has.
Yeah, right. I mean, exactly. Something that they didn't really touch on is that Bjergsen is a shot caller. There was so much pressure put on him when TSM was sort of floundering this season. He had to take up the mantle. He had to be shot calling for the team. So much else he's doing, and the most CS that he's ever been down is 7, and that was when he was on Twisted Fate roaming around against Xiao Xiao. So Bjergsen has been very consistent. He doesn't have discrepancies where he's behind.
And the thing I want to track the most in this series is how much the regular season tendencies spill over to the playoffs. Because especially in the quarterfinals, if we're talking about Bjergsen's damage numbers, Bjergsen's CS numbers, those all just plummeted down. He had a CS differential negative when he was playing his Lulu game because he roamed twice pre-10 minutes. His damage per minute was actually below the average for mid laners during the regular season.
Yeah, it's all about what champion you're playing.
Because he was playing supportive mids, doing a lot of roaming, different champion pools, different styles, and it's really going to depend what these teams go with.
Yeah, people often look at these statistics and they're like, oh, yeah, this person's obviously
Bjergsen
much
sucks.
better
He did
because
less damage on Lulu.
Yeah, there's so much context that you have to take into account. The matchups, what's happened in the actual game. Sometimes people are too concentrated on stats and they don't even look at what was happening and what got them to this point. But talking about statistics, mid lane's even more important than it ever has been. The damage share for your team. I mean, a third of your team's damage comes from the mid lane.
Yeah.
They're still the centerpiece.
Yeah, I feel like we could have this discussion all day. I'm of the opinion that
well,
mid
we've got, how much time
important.
do we have?
Final thoughts on this?
22 minutes.
Final thoughts, it's going to be a great series. Honestly, there's so many storylines. We'll have plenty of time to talk about it.
A lot of time to talk about it. For now, however, we're going to head back over to the analyst desk for a look at how these teams have fared against each other this split.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yeah, Jat was saying he'll be very curious to see how the regular season affects this series or how many of those elements find their way back into this series. Well, Team Liquid and TSM finished the regular season tied up in the head-to-head 1-1 with TSM getting the first win way back in Week 4.
Yeah, it's been overall, and it was a long time ago, so as I watched through this one, starts out pretty close. Dragon fights and whatnot. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch this game before coming into this, so I don't have the preview what's to come. But Piglet, I know, has been amazing all split long. He and Special. If you guys watch the Trash Talk videos, though, you know about how much TSM respects his Flash anti-tibbers, and there is a Fate's called Annie into death. So.
Well, Zyrene, you talked about, too, the importance of Azir in this matchup. This is where Bjergsen is playing Azir, taken away from Phoenix this time around. It seems to be working out for him. This is really the crux of the fight where the Azir comes out big.
Yeah, he gets to the backline, he gets to Phoenix, but honestly, Dyrus' setup for this with the Mega Gnar against the wall was a huge part of this. And this was a fight that Team Liquid decided to take. I remember this fight very clearly where Quas ends up using his ultimate on the wall. And then we also had Xpecial not landing the optimal tibbers there. I think it hit like Alistar and things like that.
Yeah, they went for the tanks.
So it was a very back and forth game. I think it ended up being around 41 minutes. Yeah, it's right there on your screen, 41 minutes long. It was just both times that these teams have met, it's been an over 40-minute game in this split. because they just fight tooth and nail back and forth, and they're very, like, you can tell that these are the teams that are looking for that 1 and 2 spot, and that's how they ended up going in the season for Team Liquid, right? 1-1 split there, #1 for Team Liquid, and then TSM, near the end, they did seem like they were doing some reimagining themselves, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that sounds good.
Reimagining themselves. But we're seeing more and more of that now. Like we heard on the desk, right, where it's Bjergsen's trying to shot call and do these things simultaneously. Well, not so much during the laning phase anymore. Santorin is now taking up the early game shot calling mantle, and they've given him all the power to make those calls. So when looking at these games in comparison to how the meta is now, how the teams have evolved since then, I don't know if we're actually going to see as many tendencies come through as you would think, because both teams are seeming like, Team Liquid's like, we have BO5 strategies. TSM's like, we're different TSM. So I'm very curious as to see what happens on the Rift here today.
Yeah, that was quite a few weeks ago as well. More recently, when the teams met again 3 weeks later, it was Team Liquid's shot to be in the driver's seat. And as we move into this highlight, again, rematch here. Liquid out for blood after, as you mentioned, taking an engage on that fight and losing the first matchup. They're definitely going to come out strong here in Game 2 between these two. We go 15 minutes into the game. First blood going to go over to Piglet here on Corki.
Yeah, this was where Xpecial, they thought he had been still there, and he ducked around the side and came back with the Tibbers, and they got the perfect flank off. And then Piglet.
And then there's this.
Yeah. That got them right back into the game, and Team Liquid was still in the driver's seat at that point now.
Yeah, it's funny because both these games were big comebacks. The first one back in Week 4 was Team Liquid winning for a while, then taking a one bad fight, and then it was TSM kind of coming back in and losing Baron and giving control back over to Team Liquid. So now you've got a 6,000 gold lead coming into one of the most climactic team fights here, and it's the one that basically wins Team Liquid the game.
Funnily enough, Zyrene, the last game ended on a Team Liquid engage where TSM takes the win. And this is the exact opposite. We saw Dyrus go for the engage at the start of this, and Team Liquid gets the turn on them. So just, again, showcasing the closeness of these two teams and the games and how they can be won or lost on a single team fight.
And this was actually a game that showed that Team Liquid, when they have a slight advantage, are much better at team fighting. They actually pressed an advantage, and this was a game that I remember Santorin had a lot of really flubbed barrels where he was knocking people into his team and threw somebody right at Bjergsen. I was like, are you really going to just let them get into you like that? So that was a big flub, and I remember their team fighting was not on point that game for TSM, but it was for Team Liquid, and they had the Azir, so TSM has felt the pain of Phoenix's Azir. I want to see what they do towards it today.
Well, the closeness of those games would be indicative of the closeness of this series. We're quickly approaching the start of our semifinal series between Team Liquid and TSM, and when we come back, we'll talk to the two men that have some skin in the game, owners Reginald and Liquid. Don't go anywhere. The playoffs continue after this.